Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the third video series of our three series for Hispanic Wealth Project, how to find wealth and prosperity. My name is Ricardo Cabrera. I am the operations manager for the Latino Chamber of Boulder County, and we have our lovely Marta Lochamin as a guest and part of the series with us. And today we're going to talk about the last four of the NAHREP 10 disciplines, which are what I call the social disciplines. These ones have to do with people and community. So Marta, welcome back. Thank you for being here, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what we're going to talk about NAHREP 10 and the Hispanic Wealth Project.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invitation. And my hope is that folks, even if this is the first session that you're joining us to hear and learn more about the NAHREP 10, that you'll scroll back, rewind to look at the first and second sessions as well to put all of these different disciplines together. My name is Marta Lochamin. I have been involved with the NAHREP, National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, for about the last 20 years in different capacities, both locally and participated in national work, including going to the Capitol and lobbying in our US Capitol. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the actual disciplines. But just a little bit of background, and Ricardo, what you didn't mention is that we're both national trainers for the NAHREP 10, and that's really important because we're here in Colorado and available to do these trainings, obviously anywhere, but specifically for our Colorado communities throughout the state. And the NAHREP 10 is a part of the Hispanic Wealth Project, which you also mentioned, and I think it's really important for people to know from a data perspective that the Hispanic Wealth Project is focusing on three different things. And the first one is around homeownership, and we're talking about Hispanic homeownership in the United States, trying to get over that 50% mark of homeownership. The second facet of the Hispanic Wealth Project is around small businesses and really supporting the small businesses within that first 2 years of their growth. And also we've added components of scaling businesses. The third component, that when you put all of these pieces together, and we'll continue to talk about them when we get into the disciplines, the third one is about investments. And that just means looking outside of just cash savings and functioning with cash in our pockets and looking really at some investments. And so putting all those three together is the backbone of one of these projects, the NAHREP 10. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for that. So let me just add that NAHREP is the National Association for Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. It's a national organization, and they realized a few years back that there is no reason why the Latino community could not be among the wealthiest in this country. And to make this a reality, they figured out and they said, we need information. What we need is information, we need tactics, and a little bit of guidance to help us in this cause. And this is how the NAHREP 10 were created. It's 10 different disciplines that talk about financials and investing and things like be the best at what you do. And some really grassroots, down-to-earth advice. Really, it's an advice and a way of living that will help us get to that American dream that we all want. So today, like you mentioned, Martha, we're talking about the last four, but on the description down here of this video, you're going to find a link to the channel that is dedicated just to the NAHREP 10 disciplines. And there's going to be the first two sessions and other videos that we've done and come across in our experience here. So before we go along and talk about the next disciplines, I have a short video that I would like to show you. And this video is of a gentleman. His name is Jose Mujica, and he is an incredible person. Go find a YouTube video of him. This video is an excerpt. It's about 2 minutes excerpt of a 30-minute interview, but this guy was the president of Uruguay for 4 years. And his story, his very unique story, is that he is known as the world's humblest head of state, which is the really nice part of him. The other part is that he was imprisoned because of social and state things that he did when he was younger for 12 years. And 10 of those years, he was in solitary confinement, which is mind-blowing.
Wow.
But what he did have was a lot of time to think. And he came up with some incredible philosophies of life philosophies that you can look at. But here's a short video. It's about 2 minutes. It is in Spanish with subtitles. So take a look and we'll be right back with you.
Lo diferente que nuestra forma de vivir, nuestros valores, son la expresión media de la sociedad que nos toca vivir. Y nos aferramos a eso. Pero no ahora por ser presidente. Esto lo pensamos mucho, pasamos más de 10 años de soledad en el calabozo.
All right, so we're back. Jose, he mentioned happiness in his video, and one of the other things that I like about him is this definition of happiness that he has come up with, and I just wanted to share it with you because it touches on everything that we talk about with NAHREP 10. So he describes as happiness like this. He says, happiness comes from having the ability to take care of ourselves and our families, to have friends and time to spend with them, and to have the freedom to do what motivates you, which I mean, I think it's like religion. It's so deep in many, many levels. And as far as, you know, what I see here, what I read myself is that, you know, happiness is not a destination. It's a way of living. And I also read a little bit that happiness and wealth go hand in hand. You know, they're like cousins, you know, they're not married, but there is a little bit of, you know, there's a little bit of a social element because you have to have friends and family. And there's a little bit of a wealth because it allows you to do what motivates you. So with that, Marta, let's get to the first of our disciplines today, which is number 7, and take it away.
Sure, yeah, I'll introduce number 7, be politically savvy, because public policy matters. And this one, I think, is so important in a lot of different, at a lot of different levels. And I say that, I'll give you a quick example, because people tend to think, and I've heard it even from very, you know, folks who are in different sectors or different industries, et cetera, that sometimes policy or politics start sounding, people get uncomfortable, right? And I just take it back to my classroom examples, right? From being an educator as well. And I used to talk with students about policies, and people would say, you know, students would be like, oh yeah, that's not us, like politics. We don't get into politics. We can't even vote in a voting age, right? But what we need to remember and start in our conversations, as we will continue to discuss with the NAHREP 10, is policies are everywhere. And so if we think even just as students, policies and student loan debt, for example, how we apply for student loans, how the access to, those are policies that are in place. Policies like our HOA policies, you know, who makes those decisions? What do those boardrooms look like? How do we change those policies? And so I'd like to make sure that people think about policies in all of the different ways that they affect us in a daily manner as well. And then of course, we're gonna talk about the elections because we are in a general election year. So we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and since you mentioned that, it's everywhere. So the price of gas, healthcare, unemployment rates, labor, immigration, you know, so close to our hearts sometimes, real estate, the stock market, you know, one doesn't have to be a politician or an expert in politics. I mean, I think what this discipline is talking about is that we just have to be aware enough to know what's where and how and who believes in what. I mean, ultimately, since, you know, this is an important year, and I'll invite everybody to please go vote for your local. I mean, because these policies are federal level, state level, national level, local level, municipalities, and go vote because, you know, if you just know that somebody believes generally what you believe and you vote for them, you're helping yourself one way or another. You know, I mean, I'm not a politician. I hate politics. I read, you know, when I read the paper on the politics, I just read the captions because if I start reading into it, I particularly get upset. It doesn't sit well with me. But other people, you know, are much more experts. The point is that you have to know just enough. And Marta, you're so humble. You forgot to tell us when you talked about yourself that you are running for the commissioner's seat here in Boulder County. And good luck to you. And you are the perfect person to talk about the next slides because it's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, we'll add into that. Thank you, Ricardo.
All right, so take action and go vote. Let's talk about the next of the disciplines today. It is to be physically fit because wealth without health is meaningless. So, you know, it's one of those things that you don't think about that, especially if you grew up in a Hispanic household, because usually like the mom feeds you and you don't think about eating healthy or being healthy. You're always playing with the family, with the cousins, with the friends in the neighborhood. But you know what I can think about this, you know, how can you be the best at what you do? That was discipline number 2. If you're not healthy, or how can you be a great family member if you can't participate? You know, this is all health. You know, how can you, what is the point of being wealthy, finding that point in your life where you're wealthy and prosperous if you can't leave your house because of health reasons? So, you know, what are your thoughts about that? I could talk about this for hours, but I'll let you chime in first.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple different places that we can kind of look at this. So I think about this particular discipline from our industry, and you know, we both are in the real estate industry, and what I see a lot, which happens in other industries, is this demand, and some of what Jose Mujica was already talking about too, is this consumer demand in this country. And you know, speaking about the United States, the drive for us as providers, I'm a single parent, so there's this financial provider that I know a lot of folks feel. This type of work in the real estate industry, it's, you know, we joke about it, but it's also a 24/7 job. We talk about entrepreneurs as entrepreneurs are the only people that would leave a 40-hour work week to go work 80 because we're passionate about what we're doing. And exactly what you said, Ricardo, that wealth without health, like our drive and our ambition sometimes can leave our physical health to the side. And I've spoke with really big producers, top producers in the real estate industry who really struggled with this particular discipline. And this is one of the reasons why I really like that this is part of this conversation, because we have to be taking care of ourselves to be able to keep our life in the highest value and opportunity to take care of our friends and families and clients. So we'll keep talking about that. Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, people are busy, and but just like creating wealth takes planning and discipline, so does creating fitness for oneself. So, you know, I mean, you can tell me, or whoever tells me, you know, I don't have time, I'm going to say, you know, baloney. You can make time. You can make time if you plan it. You can make time if you want to, and it's a life changer. Just like other things, you know, you feel better about yourself. You can perform better if you're a high performer. You can your stamina grows. You look better, you know, and finding the time to exercise. Now, you know, you don't have to be Mr. Universe. You know, we're not talking about, you know, dedicating your life to exercise. It's about a little bit of fitness and a little bit more dieting. But that's the wrong word. It's not dieting. It's nutrition. You have to be aware of what you eat, how much you eat, and what you put in your body, because it's your temple, and exercise as a complement to that. And that whole thing, that holistic thought is the being physically fit. It's a holistic thing. It's not just
doing push-ups, sit-ups. It's about what you put into your body that weighs more on your fitness than the actual exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Discipline number 8. We're getting to the end here.
All right, I'm going to introduce number 9.
Yes, number 9. Thank you.
Discipline. Yeah, be generous with people who are less fortunate. And this is one that we talk about in the NAHREP 10. This is one we talk about as an organization, as NAHREP, a bigger organization. The subtext here is because philanthropy feeds your heart and spirit and gives more purpose to your work. And this is one for me, I feel is super important within our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx community, because there is a lot of philanthropy that we do as community members. And a lot of times it's the terminology that isn't used. So we're not thinking about philanthropy. I'm paying for my sisters or my cousins or tuition for, so they can continue studying in our home countries. And I'm not thinking about that as philanthropy, but really that's what it is. Because if I was here in the US donating, as many people do, to different funds or organizations or foundations that end up really doing the same thing to support youth or kids getting education, that's called philanthropy. And so to me, it's almost an introduction of the term. That's one piece that I want to talk about a little bit today. And then also the piece that we really have to be careful, because we get asked to do a lot of support for organizations, for even our workplaces. We'll talk about that, kind of the bilingual skill versus interpreter and translator that is giving back and caring for community. But with the NAHREP 10, I believe it's some of those tough love conversations that we've already talked about in other sessions, is that I believe that as our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx communities, we need to get on our own feet financially and go through all these other disciplines so that we can be in a place that we can really implement discipline number 9.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's a perfect segue to my definition and how I like to describe this discipline number 9, which is first of all, helping people brings joy and pleasure. It's a wonderful thing to do. And what I like to think about this as well is that it could be any time and it could be anything. So it doesn't have to be money. I mean, most people say philanthropy, okay, I'm going to give somebody, my money away. It could be your time and your knowledge, which is just as valuable as money. And it could be any time. So it could be when you're young, when you're, not so young, when you're retired, when you're older and you have a lot of time to give, or knowledge, and it all counts. So, I know families that their weekend thing is to go to the local food bank and feed people. Okay, well, that's beautiful. I know people like you and I that we are, a little bit older, and we are doing things like this. We're sharing our knowledge about the NAHREP 10. And, there are other people that volunteer their times to the countless number of community service and nonprofits out there that need that manpower. It all counts. And so I just like to say, guys, it's a pleasure to do it, and do it. You don't have to do it now. So what you said is that maybe later on in life when you're financially set and you have time to give, okay, well, that counts too. But there's a lot of ways to help people in the community, and it falls under the philanthropy umbrella.
Yeah, great.
All right, so here we are getting to the last one. Let's see if I can get the number right this time. Discipline number 10. Go ahead, Marta, take it away.
So number 10, it really ties in with your introduction today with that video, I believe. Be active in the lives of your family and children, because familia is central to who we are. And, there's a bigger conversation. Some of the same things I've already started to allude to is this real pressure for us to provide, for us to work, which is critical and it's important, and that can take away from being active members in our households. And that's just a reality for a lot of our families. certainly for immigrant families in this country. And so this kind of call out to remind us that with these other 9 disciplines, and you know, Gary Acosta, our co-founder of NAHREP, talks about this a lot in his different conversations about the NAHREP 10, is that number 10 was put there at the end of this list because ultimately everything that we do and these other disciplines should get us closer to the lives of our family and children. And I also want to remind everyone that sometimes they're not our own children. We have folks in our community who don't have their own kids, but they're reaching out and working with. And most importantly, we are role models for so many people in our communities. And sometimes we forget about that, but we are also active and playing critical roles in that way as well.
Absolutely. And family is, you know, is defined culturally, right? So if you ask me, you know, define family, I want to say is my immediate family. So you have parents and you have brothers and sisters and sons or grandkids. But you also have cousins and second cousins and third cousins and their parents and your uncles. This is, in my definition, all what is family. And it is in the United States. It's cultural, meaning that every culture defines it. But, you know, I know many families that they have their yearly family reunion, right? That's you know, it's in our DNA. It causes, because it's a connection to our past and to our future. And it always comes back, you know, whether it's your parents or your kids, if you're there and you are being a role model when you're older, and your kids see how you treat your parents, when you get to be the grandparent, they're going to treat you how they saw it. So it always comes back. You know, so if I could say just a little note for everybody today, go call your parents or your cousins or your best friend, you know, give yourself that little break, that little family energy boost that you need. And it's a beautiful thing. And it connects everything that we talked about with the 10 disciplines. It lands here. It lands, like Jose said, he made a mention of time and money, and he relates the value of time as money. So like, for example, he says, look, if it took me, if I bought a pair of shoes, for example, that cost me $50 and I make $10 an hour, that means I spent 5 hours of my life working for those shoes, right? If you say, I'm going to buy a $30,000 car and it's going to be a $500 payment a month. Well, if I'm working for 40 hours at $10 an hour, that's a lot of hours. I'm spending a third of my life paying for that car. And I'm kind of making a segue here to where we get to do our free time conversation about how do these 4 class concepts relate to each other. And I believe that's crucial. He was, you know, Jose was saying about time is money and money is life, or life is money and time. And if you think of it this way, you know, for me, it was a double why when I thought about, you know, wow, am I going to really work 20 hours a week to pay for my car? The answer for me is no, I'm not going to do that, because I want to have time, you know, to spend with my friends, with my family, with my kids, to stay fit, to educate myself and be more involved with philanthropy, or maybe even learn a little bit about politics, just to mention the 4 disciplines we talked about today. What do you think? I mean, how is this all related to each other?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about it, you know, I can speak from my own experience, right? But for me, one of the pieces, you know, when we look at all of the disciplines, and I know we're focusing on 7, 8, 9, and 10 today, and they're all connected. And so my encouragement is, initially, when we lead these workshops in person, I always tell folks, like, hone in on the one that really is calling you, that feels compelling to you today, right now, and just focus on one. The goal is that we're going to get our community members and our friends and our colleagues, our families, to really start looking at how they can incorporate every one of these, because if you miss one, then it's not all going to come together, right? That's one piece. The second piece in the connection, for me personally, leads to number 10, because I already said this, I'm a single mom, I've got 2 kids. And so for me, all of these different pieces were so critical. And in my growth as well, I was part of my becoming an NAHREP 10 trainer. For me, this effort with the Hispanic Wealth Project was truly in 2014, was for me what tipped me over from just being a member of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals to seeking executive director roles and moving into leadership. Because for me, I realized that although I've been spending this time as in the industry as an educator, talking to other folks about financial literacy, I had not done that, Ricardo, in my own home. I had not taken the time to have these conversations with my own kids. And that is a mistake. And so that's part of the encouragement that I give folks who are looking at it today, who might be thinking the same thing, like, whoa, I've lost some time. Or some of the examples you gave us with our calculators last time, I haven't looked at that, or I haven't pulled out and created a budget, you know, and those are things that start today. And they're all super connected. For me, my responsibility as a parent has been to model the behaviors for my kids. And some of them I've done well in. And I was telling somebody earlier today, you know, for number 8, my kids got to a point where they would tell me, hey, Mom, I think you should go for a run. What is it means? Yeah, they realized and they started to see, and that mental health for me was connected to my physical fitness. And I chose to become a Zumba instructor. This is like fun facts. You might not even know this about me, Ricardo.
Wow.
That I chose Zumba instructor years ago. But the reason why was because, one, me encanta la música, and I enjoy dancing, and I'm also a single parent, and I have a job, and it was another way for me to make some money, because that's a reality as a parent. And it was a great way for me to get my kids out there and be physically fit, but more importantly, role model for them. And I used that particular, work, because it really is work, to go into schools in the district that we live in, where my kids were still in, they were still in grade school and middle school at that time, to do outreach with Spanish-speaking families specifically, and offer that when we look at number 9 and philanthropy, like how can I help teachers who have language barriers with families and connect it? And Zumba was a great way to do it. So it was all these different pieces connected, because we have to be active. We have to give back. We have to take care of ourselves physically. And so, wow, I mean, if we can put some of these together, that's, let's think outside the box and let's encourage each other to do that. And I've seen a lot of different examples around number 8 where people are getting involved with their communities, doing community walks, community hikes, putting together these types of groups. And why not add these kinds of conversations into those activities as well?
Absolutely. I mean, what a great example. I mean, and I'll tell you what I heard from your wonderful example is that you can do it. If there's a will, there's a way. And there are, we talked about 10 disciplines. And if you think of each one individually, it's a daunting task. But you shouldn't think of them as each one individually. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of living that they're all interrelated. And if you start with one, the rest will fall into place. So whether it's, you mentioned physically fit. Well, I don't have time, but I love to dance, so I'm going to be a Zumba instructor, right? So that helps you with, making more money. You have a little extra money. Now you are being a Zumba instructor. You're doing what you love. You're doing philanthropies with it as well. It allows you to save a little bit more. You're being a great role model to your kids because, unfortunately, parents learn as they go, or actually that's not true. They learn 3 years after it's too late. And then, then you start thinking, but your kids watch this, and that is the lesson in itself, that you are bettering yourself and that you are trying and working hard to make things happen. And they hear this. So these disciplines are things that, a lot of these guys, and I'll tell you, a lot of these guys, my grandfather used to say, and of course, when I'm 8, I'm like, yeah. That's, now I look back and I'm like, they are so important that we share this with everybody else and with other people. If it's one or two, so we start sharing this information, and we are, I mean, we should learn this in high school. There is no class in high school.
Absolutely.
There's home ec, there's auto mechanics, there's no home finance, there's no life, life guides. And a lot of people do learn this when they get older. The better plan for us is what we're doing today, Marta, is let's share this with everybody so you can hear it once now and then start changing your life, because this changes the world for yourself and for your friends and your colleagues, and it's a great thing when you start living this healthy, holistic, with a plan to the future lifestyle. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm going to tie that in a little around number 7, and I just feel like that's part of our responsibility. And I want to just express that in the sense of, again, around public policy and the election that's coming up, and your encouragement for folks to vote and participate. That's a responsibility that we have, right? The other piece of that for me, specifically in 2016, there was a whole lot of other events in my life that cumulatively said, this is, for me, I needed to run for office, but it was specifically around 2016 and some of the rhetoric that came directly towards our community. And we are talking about the gap in homeownership that has also created with policies in this country that has created this gigantic wealth gap. And so for me, the response in 2016 was, what would that look like if I ran for office in 2020? And that as a personal responsibility, and it's going to look different for everybody, but the conversation about understanding what are the policies, who's making those policies, where are we? Because I truly believe when we talk about the Hispanic, Latino, Latinx community as a larger number in the great, I think we're number 2 from a GDP level in the United States if we were our own country. That economic power, that people power, that responsibility power is part of when we talk about politics and demanding policies that are going to change those policies that have affected our communities negatively. And this is a really important time. And so the encouragement is, again, just to, like you said, become more aware. And how does that look for your industry, wherever you're at, whatever job or career, or even folks who are working in their homes, and that is the most unpaid labor out there, right? A lot of work, and certainly for our parents right now who are also trying to educate their kids online. There's a lot of different opportunities to look at these types of policies in different levels.
Absolutely, definitely, and thank you for that. If I had a mic, I would drop it for you right now, because you're speaking some wonderful truths, and inviting people to be involved and to keep going. So let's finish up. I want to ask you one last question before we finish, just to close this the series up. Which one is your favorite of the 10 disciplines?
You know what, I think if you ask me that in, from month to month, which is part of this encouragement, is who are you connecting with and having a mastermind session or walk once a month to talk about these different disciplines and check in. That would be my goal for everybody. So if you asked me that today, I think probably my mind is heading towards number 7, simply because we're getting so close to an election here in the United States for our November 3rd. And it's not just about the ballot, it's about making sure that more people in this country specifically are participating in this voting system. It's, as we all know, there's a big fight around mail-in ballots for the country. In Colorado, where we live, we have been doing it successfully for years. And so those are policies that affect us. And when we start talking about, what does voter suppression look like, it also means we have to understand the history of that. So that is where my mind is at the most, probably for the next 70 days or so. Right. But if you after November 4th, it might be something different. What about you? What's your number are you focused on today?
Well, I like number 3. It's always been my favorite, which is live below your means and be ready for the next recession. I discovered budgeting many years ago, and as a matter of fact, my daughter called me just this weekend talking about what to do. She had a little bit of extra money, and she's like, "How can I invest it?" And I'm like, "Okay, so here's what you do: put some into your IRA and put some into your account that you put in there and forget." Because she started. I was so proud of my little girl. She's like, "I want to start saving towards my down payment of a house, and how can I do that?" So I gave her the, do this and that. And then she said, "Well, and I have this other money that I'm not going to use for a year, but I don't know what to do with it." I'm like, "So here's what you do." And then I said, I gave her my what I would tell everybody is put all the money that you make goes into one pot, right? And then you do your budget. I'm talking about my budget. Whatever your budget says, you draw that from your master pot to your checking account, and that's what you have for the rest of the month. If you run out of money there, well, too bad, because that is your budget and you have to live by it. And what you do there is that you are maximizing your savings. You really are saving everything that you can save by separating those two pots, right? And living by a budget. So for me, discovering the budget and how it works brought me into the rest of the 10 disciplines. But for me, that was my into all the other ones. And, and I started doing this one way or another, out of college. When I started working, I was 25 when I finished college, and I started working, and I had some people that gave me some great advice, and it opened up, the other disciplines to me. And I've been living by it unknowingly until I read them, and I'm like, oh, I do that, and oh, I do this, and I relate to that one. For a long time, and as a matter of fact, is one of the requirements to become an NAHREP 10 certified instructor is that you live by these disciplines, and it's one of the questions that they ask you on the interview. And if you pass that, then you can get to the rest of it. So yeah, number 3, live below your means, and be ready for the next recession. It's my favorite one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Absolutely. I want to just share this. When I look at NAHREP 10, one of the pieces, and especially what we were talking about today in number 10, is this phrase que no hay falta de tiempo, hay falta de interés. And you talked about it already a little bit, that there's not, it's not a lack of time, it's a lack of interest. And so I want to close out with that, because I feel like the more introduction that we can do around the NAHREP 10 disciplines, and people will call them, something different, and there's other similar kind of ideas out there conceptually, great. Choose one. We just happen to be obviously big supporters of NAHREP 10 and the Hispanic Wealth Project, but focus in and grab your comadres, grab some buddies, grab, and it could be your fitness team or your group that you run with or bike with or whatever it might be, and introduce them to this conversation, because this is truly what it's going to take for us to build ourselves up around financial literacy so that it is a more common conversation.
Absolutely. So thank you, Marta. With this, let's just close out, because I know I don't want to finish. I want to keep talking about this forever. But let's just close out our last of our sessions. Share these disciplines, guys, with your friends and your family and your colleagues. Call me, call Marta. I'm going to have some contact information down here. There's going to be a website in there with a link to all the calculators that we use throughout. I want to wish you, Marta, really the best of luck in your county commissioner campaign. I think you will be successful, and you'll do great things. And just to finish up, I have one surprise question for you, Marta. And
okay.
Yeah, are you ready?
Yep.
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word?
Yes.
Tenacity.
Wow, yes, beautiful. It describes you. So thank you for everything. And until next time.
Thank you. Okay, take care.